What's up, guys? In today's video, I'm going to show you how to get the Lumastep M2 automatic running boards from Boost Auto installed on our TRD Pro. These things are absolutely loaded with features. It's a little bit of a lengthy video, but I'm going to really try to walk you through step by step so anybody can do this on their own. It's a lot of running wiring, honestly. It's an easy install. It's just a lot of running wiring. So you can build these things out in so many different ways. I'm going to go over how we built ours at the end of the video and all of the features and functions. But first, let's take a look at what comes in the kit. I'll show you how to get the install done on the truck, and then I'll give you a look at the features. Here's what comes in the kit. You have your two boards, 3 different wiring harnesses, which I will go over and show you how to differentiate. Very easy. You can't really mix them up. You have your hardware. These are spacers right here. You may or may not have them depending on your setup. We are going to have to use them, so I'll show you where they go. If you don't get them in your kit, just skip that step when we get to it. You have your main ECU board, some wire hiders. You do get some T-taps with the kit as well, and then we have our 4 mounting brackets. Now these are very well labeled, PF for passenger front, DF driver front, and the 2 rear, they are labeled rear. I don't know if you can see the stickers on the back there, but they're interchangeable. They're exactly the same part number, they're identical, so those 2 don't really matter. These 2 obviously do. So the first step that we're going to do is actually get these 4 mounted up to the truck, and then we'll go over the wiring. For the front mounting bracket, we're going to start on the passenger side. There's going to be 3 holes right in this location up underneath the truck. We'll get underneath there. I'll show you where it's at. There may be some 12mm bolts in the holes already. If there is, just remove those because we're going to be using the hardware sent from Boost Auto. So when you get up underneath the truck, right here, again, this is the front passenger door. Going to slide up underneath here. And the 3 holes you're going to be looking for are right here. 1, 2, and 3. Okay, so you can see the front wheels right there. You can't really mess it up. There's a grommet right there. So 1, 2, and 3. I've already removed the hardware. We actually removed the old steps that we had. That's why I have nothing in mine. Again, you may have stock bolts. Just take those out. Let me grab the bracket and we'll get that secured in place. So when you're attaching your front brackets, you want the motor going towards the rear of the vehicle. Again, obviously this is the front tire. So we're going to take our hardware and line up our slots on the bracket and secure in these 3 locations. Now, the hardware you're going to use the bolt, then a lock washer, then a flat washer. Okay, that's the order it's going to go in. So I'm just going to get these 3 started. We're not going to want to tighten these down just yet. So just get all 3 started to just kind of hold the bracket up there in place. All right, so here's a look. You can see the 2 locations there on the front side, and then the one right there on the rear. Again, we don't have it tightened down. We have them snug, but we want them loose enough to where if we need to make some final adjustments, we can once we get the actual boards on. So let's go get the rear bracket on. Now for the rear, you're going to be looking, this is obviously the passenger side rear door. It's going to be down in this location here. It's going to be basically the same type of setup. There's going to be 3 bolts that the bracket's going to line up with. We'll get under there and I'll show you where they're at. Okay, so here they are right here. There's 2 here and 1 here. Easiest way to find them is there's a big boot coming down from the underside of the truck with a whole bunch of wiring in it. Don't pay attention to all this external wiring. That's all stuff that we've installed on the truck. But you can't miss this giant boot with cords or wiring coming down. The holes are right there by that wiring boot. So we're just gonna go ahead and line up our bracket here. So same thing, we're just gonna take 3 bolts and just get them started. Don't tighten them down yet. Then you can go ahead and repeat on the driver's side. It's going to be the exact same process in the exact same locations. So now that we have all 4 mounting brackets loosely secured to the truck, we can go ahead and get the wiring started. We're going to be disconnecting the battery. So what you want to do is come into your truck settings, scroll all the way down to info and security, and just make sure the setting that's labeled privacy lock is turned off. Go ahead and pop open the tailgate. Now we're safe to disconnect the battery. So on the hybrids, we're just going to go ahead and lift the seat, pop this panel off like so, and just go ahead and disconnect the negative. Actually, we're going to be doing that nut right there, and we'll disconnect the entire negative post from the battery. You want to make sure you just kind of tuck it down out of the way so it doesn't, so it can't pop back up and touch the post on you. So before I start running the wiring, I'm just going to go ahead and remove all the panels that I know I'm going to want out of my way. That way, once I start running wiring, I could just run it to where it needs to go, and you know, it'll be a much faster and, you know, a more seamless process. So I am going to remove the panel right here, which just pops straight up like this. You just set that aside, and then we'll go ahead and take the fuse panel out of the way. Again, just pops up like so. Now I'm also going to remove this panel right here. In order to do that, these pop clips, you just push down in the middle, you'll hear a pop, and then you can just take them out like that. So I'm going to go ahead and take 1, 2, 3, and 4 out of the way. Once we do that, we can take this panel and kind of just slide it forward. Now it's going to be tucked behind that panel right here, so just kind of pull that middle one out of the way, and we can slide this out and set it aside. Now there's going to be 2 more pop clips to remove this panel right here. There's one right here, and this one you don't push in on, you just kind of have to get your pry tool in the edge there and yank it out like that. And then there's going to be, you're not going to be able to see this one, but there's going to be one more down in here. You can't miss it, just follow this piece and you'll see the pop clip. It's right down in here. So same thing, just going to get my pry tool up underneath it. Once you have those 2 clips out of the way, you can go ahead and just pull this forward and set that aside. And you can see that's going to give us a lot of access to the boot, to run wiring down underneath the truck, across the truck, all that good stuff. You're going to want to repeat the same, well, at least I'm going to repeat the same exact process on the driver's side, remove the exact same panels in the exact same way. Now here in the front, we're going to pop up this, again, held on the same way, just with clips. Set that aside. And then this kick panel right here, we're going to remove it up under the top there. You'll feel there's going to be a little nut. Just go ahead and unscrew that nut, and then this is going to pop off. You're not going to be able to see it. Maybe I'll take a picture, but you can't miss it. You just reach up in here, unscrew the nut, and then that's what it looks like. And then this will just pop off, and you kind of just guide it off of the screw that you took that nut off of, and then just set this aside. Again, repeat this on the driver's side and we'll be ready to go. Let's get to the wiring. So the first harness we're going to focus on is the main harness that's going to plug into our module. Now the ECU module that I showed you in the beginning looks like this. It only has 1 port. You can't mess it up. There's no other ports on it. So the main wiring harness, the way to differentiate is it obviously has the only big cable or connection that's going to plug into that box. Also in this whole bundle, you're going to have 2 wires that are going to say battery positive and battery negative, and they have everything labeled very nicely. I don't know if you can see those white stickers on there, but they say battery positive, battery negative, so you can't mess it up. And then if you follow, keep coming down to the other end of this harness, you're going to have your motor connections, which look like this. And again, they're labeled driver side motor, passenger side motor. And then the last connection you're going to have is this long pigtail that looks like this. This is for your signal. Now, depending on what options you get with your steps, it's going to depend on whether or not you have these. You know, I'll touch on all the options towards the end of the video, but typically most people are going to have this type of wiring. If anything, you're not going to have some of these, which you wouldn't have to worry about then. We of course got we got just about every option they offer. So this one here, the signal input, it has 2 smaller cables coming off the end of that, and again, they're also labeled. One is labeled high, one is labeled low. I'll show you where they go. Now, where you want to mount your module is up to you. You're going to want to put it somewhere near your battery. And the reason being is when we take our main connection and we plug it into the box, you'll hear it and feel it click. Your battery positive and battery negative are only about that long. So unless you want to extend these, you're going to want to mount this somewhere near your battery. Again, in the hybrid, you can mount it underneath your rear seats. In a non-hybrid, you'd put this probably up underneath your hood. What I'm going to do, because we have our auxiliary batteries in the back, I'm actually going to be putting this in the bed. It's not going to matter. All the wires are going to be ran to the same spot. So don't get confused by me putting this module in the bed. As long as you have your battery positive and battery negative next to your battery, the rest of the cables are all going to go to the same spot, and I'll show you where that is. But let me get this mounted in the bed real quick, and we'll continue on with running our wiring to the proper locations. So here's where I decided to put my module. You can see it stuck right to our Retrax canister right there. That way it's up out of the weather. Don't have to ever worry about it getting wet or anything. So the two motor cables are fed through my grommet. If you've been around the channel, you know that's how we get access into the bed with all of our wiring. This is all a mess right here. Don't pay attention to this right now. But the only two wires that are kept in the bed are the battery positive and battery negative. The two motor cables and that signal wire with the high and the low are run through that grommet down below the truck, and that's how we're going to get access. So here's a look at the other side. Again, they're popped down through that grommet down below the truck. That's how we got them down underneath. So we just have, as I mentioned, the two motor connections, which the driver's side motor is going to be ran over to the front mounting location. I'll show you where it plugs in. The passenger side, same thing, is going to be taken to the passenger side front mounting bracket. The signal wire, now this one we're going to have to run up inside the truck. I'll give you a good look at how I'm going to do all of this once it's completed. But the signal wire, we have to get this over to the kick panel by the front driver's seat. Okay, we have to tap these into two very specific locations. So don't be confused just because I have my power going to the bed. Just pretend wherever you're going to mount your module, you need to be by your battery. Okay, so whether you mount it like I did or underneath your seat for a hybrid, underneath the hood for a non-hybrid, it doesn't change where the wiring is going to be ran to. Okay, so don't get confused. I'm just using my auxiliary battery set up in the back instead of plugging or getting power from my truck battery. That's the only difference between my setup and what most people are going to do. Okay, so let me get all this ran and I'll give you a good look at what I did. Let's start with the signal wire with the high and low. So what we did is we came up from underneath the boot right here. If you've been around my channel, you've probably seen this 100 times. This is it right here. So we simply just ran it underneath this panel here up into the front. Here it is coming out that side, and then we just ran it up, and of course we're going to clean it up, but basically we needed to get it over to the driver's side. As I mentioned, there is a path. You can see where it's going up underneath there. If you take a wire fish, or just don't use anything sharp, because there's wires of course, but you can run it up over there to get it to the driver's side. And you can see here it is right here. Okay, so again, the high and the low connections. And we're going to be tapping into one of those connections right there, which I'll show you in a second. But let me show you how we ran the motor cables. The motor cables are these two bundles right here. Passenger one was pretty easy and straightforward. You literally just ran it. I have mine up above the frame, behind and up above our compressor back there. And then you can see right up there, here it is right here. We just have to secure it. But again, I just ran it up. I'm going to run it up above the frame there, and right down to our front motor. We didn't plug it in yet, but here's the end of it. It's going to be plugging in to that spot right there when we're ready. Now the driver's side was a little trickier. Let me show you what we did there. So for the driver's side, I didn't want to have to extend any wiring. I wanted to just be able to use the wiring that they gave me without having to make it longer. So we had enough room with a little bit to spare, but we had to do, let me see if I can get you a look. So you can see right up in there, hopefully, we went up above the frame, up over the gas tank. Here we are on the other side of the gas tank. You can see it's right up here. And you want to make sure, if you do it this way, you want to make sure you go above the heat shield, because you don't want it you know, getting too close to your exhaust. So we ran it up above the heat shield. Now here's the driver's side of the frame. You can see it coming out the other end of the heat shield. And if we come out to the outer part of the frame, you can see it is, there it is right there. Ran it down. And again, we didn't plug it in yet, but we have it hanging right down there. And it's gonna plug into the, that spot right there coming from the front mounting bracket. So if you do it this way, just make sure you stay away from the exhaust, go up and above the heat shield. And as you can see, there's plenty to do it. Now, again, I know most people aren't going to be running the wires like this because I'm using my auxiliary batteries in the bed, but I'm just giving you an example of how you can do it. Honestly, as long as the wires get to the proper spot, it doesn't really matter how you get there. Just try to avoid anything moving or anything that gets really hot, like the exhaust. So next up, we're going to do the passenger side wiring harness. The way you tell that one apart is one end of it, you're going to have a positive and negative with the ring terminal on it. On the same end, you're going to have a red and yellow striped wire with a spade connector on it. And if you follow it down, you're going to have an inline fuse, but if you follow it down, you're going to have a connection that looks like this. Now, you're going to have this white connection here, but if you go with the rock light feature that they offer, which we obviously did, you're also going to have this white little pigtail wire coming off there. I'll show you how all this works. And then if you keep following it down, it's going to Y at one point. And one of the Y ends is going to have two connections that look like that. They're going to go to our front mounting bracket where the motor is. And then the other end, it's a really long wire that has, it's actually a blue wire, okay? That's gonna go to the tail light. So I'm gonna go ahead and run all this, how I'm gonna run it, and I'll give you a look at how I did all that. Okay, so here's what we did with the passenger side harness. Here is the positive and negative with the ring terminal that I showed you. The red and yellow striped wire is running over that way along with everything else. So the only thing right here is the positive and negative that these two we are gonna connect to the battery. It doesn't matter. I could run these up to the bed if I wanted to. You just have to take them to a battery. Okay. Everything else is running over that way, up underneath the panel here. And here you can see, here's the red and yellow. There's the rest of the bundle. There's that connection that looks like that. That's going to be underneath here. Again, I'll show you, what they all connect to. The red and yellow wire is the only one that I've had to extend so far. So the red and yellow, I had to extend because this red and yellow wire is actually going to go up to the front passenger headlight. So let me show you how we did it. I extended it, ran it down through the same boot that we've been using. It popped down underneath, and I literally ran it exactly the same way up along the frame, just like I showed you with the motor cable. So we just ran it along the frame, and then when we got to the front here, what we did, so hopefully this is turning out for you. So here's the red wire. If you run it up, again, it's just following the frame. You can run it up above this. This isn't it. But it's up above here. You can see it right there. So it's running up over this piece here, and that's going to take you into the front passenger wheel well. So here you can see where it pops out. This is it right here. And then you can run it behind this piece. Again, I just used my wire fish to do all this, just so you guys know it's super easy to do. You run it up behind this piece and then up into the engine bay. And here we have it right here. Okay, so now I'm just going to connect the spade terminal back to the back to this end, and I'll show you how to pop the headlight off and where we're going to tap into. So instead of removing the headlight, I actually just removed my air box. That's just held on with a hose clamp, super easy to take out. So this is the wiring connection we need to get at. In order to remove it, you're going to take this tab, push it down like so, and then if you push it down further, it's going to allow you to remove the wiring harness. Okay, so now we're going to take one of the included T-taps, and the wire that we want to tap into is when you're looking at the back. I don't know if I'm going to have enough slack. Maybe I'll take a picture and put it on the screen. But when you're looking at the tab, or I'm sorry, the back of the wiring harness with the tab on top, you can see that one side has two like bigger connections. The other side has the smaller ones. If you're looking at it with this tab on top, it's the top left-hand wire. It's this bluish colored one. Okay, that's the one we're going to be tapping into. Again, I'll put a picture on the screen just in case. I'm not sure how well that's going to turn out, but that's what we're going to be tapping into. So we're just going to take one of our included T-taps and connect it to that blue wire. And with the pair of pliers, we just want to pinch it until it clicks. Then we can take our spade connector from that red and yellow wire and connect it to our T-tap. And then we can go ahead and replace our harness. Like so. Just make sure it's pushed in all the way and then bring that bar back up and you'll see it and feel it lock into place. Now the blue wire coming off the passenger side harness, as I mentioned, goes back to the taillight. So pop down through that same grommet and we just ran it up behind this panel. You can see it right here. So we're just going to go back and zip tie it to existing wiring. Ran it behind this little cover here. It's right here. Again, we just have to zip tie it to existing wiring. You can see there's plenty of options. And then that'll bring it down behind the rear wheel well. And so now we just have to pop the taillight off. Super easy to do. And we can feed it up into here and tap in. I'll show you the right spot to tap in on the taillight. To remove the taillight, it's going to just be two 10mm bolts, one here and one here. Just go ahead and take those 10s off. Once you have those two 10s out of the way, you can just kind of get your hands on the taillight and you're going to pull straight back towards you. Okay, with the taillight removed, you can undo your harness, and the pin we're going to be looking, or I'm sorry, the wire we're going to be looking to pin to is the bottom left. If you have the tab on top, so looking at it in this orientation, it's the bottom left or pin 6. Okay, it's a green and white one. So go ahead and take another T-tap, pinch it on there. I'm going to grab my pliers and squeeze it nice and tight. And then we can take our blue wire coming from the passenger side harness and plug it into this T-tap. Now they give you a ton of wiring, just making sure that's on there nice and good. So we got a plenty of extra, so I'm just going to kind of bunch it up and zip tie it probably down in this cavity. There's plenty of room there to hide it. So just secure it with a zip tie. Make sure you have all the extra, you know, nice and secure so it doesn't fall out while you're driving or get tied up in anything moving. All right, last harness is the driver side harness, and this one is going to have the same white connector that I showed you on the passenger side, also that white pigtail for our rock lights, another red and yellow striped wire, which is kind of long, and then on the other end is going to be your connections that we have to plug into the driver side motor. So basically this white port or white connection is going to connect to the passenger side white connection. One's male, one's female, obviously, so we're just going to go ahead and line them up and plug those in together. And then from here, we're basically just going to repeat the steps that we just did on the passenger side headlight. So we have to take this red and yellow from our driver side harness and now go to the driver side headlight. In order to do that, I think I'm going to have to extend it again, unfortunately. I'm probably going to go that way and then up into the engine bay. Let me see which way I'm gonna, the best way to route this, but the driver side harness is the easiest. You just plug that white connection into the passenger white connection. This red and yellow is gonna go to your driver side headlight. You're gonna be plugging into and tapping into the same pin that we did on the passenger side, pin number 8. And then we're just gonna be running these to the driver side front mount to plug into the driver side motor. Let me get that done and I'll show you what I decided to do, what route I decided to take with this. All right, so what I decided to do was take both of the harnesses, the red and the white, or I'm sorry, the red and yellow from the driver's side. Again, we did have to extend it, but I decided to take that and the two connections for the motor down underneath that grommet, and then I literally just followed the same path that I showed you before, where we went up and over the heat shield, literally the same exact path. So I'm not going to show it again. I've already shown it, and I'll show you on the driver's side. So here we have the these are the ones that are going to plug into the step. Don't pay attention to those yet. But here we have, this is the harness that we just ran over. We plugged it into the cables on the driver side mounting bracket. And then the red wire, we did the same thing that we did on the passenger. We ran it up over the frame, up into the front wheel well. You could see it in there, up into the engine bay. And I did have to remove my box again to get at the same connection. You may be able to see the red and yellow wire down there, but again, you're popping into, you're just T-tapping into the same exact wire that we did on the passenger side. That's why I didn't show it, but you're tapping into that same exact location. So now let me see where we're at. I'm going to try to kind of start to button things up, and then we'll get the steps mounted. The rock lights, I might actually have to do that tomorrow because we're running out of daylight, but of course I'll show it in the video. So let me see where we're at. Let me regroup here, and we'll get the steps mounted on the mounting brackets. Last two connections we need to make are those high and low signal wires. The harness you need to get to when you're looking here on the driver's side underneath the steering wheel, it's going to be kind of back behind this bundle up here. So it's this one right here. I already have it popped out, and it actually plugs up. So I don't know if you can see this, but the wires are actually coming down out of the bottom. I'll put a picture on your screen as well, but that's the one you need to unplug, and we're going to be tapping into two of the wires on this bundle. Okay, so when you're looking at this connection, if you turn it around and the tab is on the top, you're going to take one of your connectors that look like this, and it's the purple wire. It's all the way on the top, all the way to the right. Okay, so top right wire, it's the purple one. So that is where we're going to tap our high signal into. So we're going to try to kind of give ourselves a little room. I did peel back the tape a little bit just to give us a little more room to work. So there we go. So that purple wire right there, okay, we're going to take one of our connectors here, press those in. I'm going to grab my pliers and really kind of squeeze down on that just to make sure it's a nice solid connection. Then we can take our wire that's labeled high and slide it in this end, close it until it clicks. Now our signal low is going to go to the white wire right underneath the purple. So if you're looking at it with the tab on top, all the way to the bottom, all the way to the right, okay, right there underneath the purple. You want to make sure the wire is inside the teeth in there, so when you clamp down on this, it's going to make that connection. And then we'll take our low, slide it into place, make sure it's nice and secure, and now we can plug in the harness back into its spot. All right, now that we have all of our connections made, other than the rock lights, again, I'm going to have to do them tomorrow. I will show you that. But now to put the boards on the mounts, we're going to go ahead and connect to power. So we're going to take our red and black that we have to our battery under the seat that I showed you. We're going to connect them. Then we're also going to connect the red and black in the bed. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and make those 4 connections. Okay, connections are made. So now hopefully when we open the door, the front one is going to drop down. And it did. Perfect. So we have to leave the door open, obviously, because we want them in the deployed position to put the step on. So let's go over to the steps. I'll show you how we're going to prep them, and we'll get them mounted. And we're just about done, other than the rock lights, which we'll do tomorrow. Okay, before we prep the steps, these spacers, again, you may or may not have to use these. They are needed in my application. So all you're going to do is take, you can see it has 2 holes on them. All we're going to do is take them, and you can see the 2 holes on the brackets. We're just going to put one on every bracket. Okay, so we'll just do the driver's side for right now. Now you're going to get 2 bags of hardware. If you have to use the spacers, you're going to use the longer ones. These 2 bags are the same exact hardware. It's just this bag is longer, this bag is shorter. We have to use the spacers as I showed you, so we need to use the longer bolts. So what we're going to do is we're going to take 4 bolts, and I'll have my wife come around closer here. So we're going to take the hardware, again, longer ones, and right here at the edge of the board, or actually, so I'm glad I just did that. You're going to be able to tell the difference between the driver side and the passenger side, because on the front of the board, you're going to have two connections right there. That's where our other two wire harnesses are going to be plugging into. So we're going to come to the other end of the board, and we're going to take 4 hardware. You can see there's a little bit of a space right there, just enough for us to get the hardware in, and we're going to put 4 on each step. And you're going to want to position them roughly around where you think they're going to need to be. So when we go over to the truck, we can just drop them down into, we just have to obviously line them up with the mounting brackets on the truck. So let's go ahead and go do that. And I'm going to bring 4 of the nuts with us just to get them started. All right, so again, with those 2 wire connections that I showed you at the front, we're just going to line up our bolts. They don't have to be perfect right now, just want to get them lined up and through the brackets. Now I'm just going to get 2 of the nuts just started. Don't tighten them down yet, because we're going to want to be able to slide them and get them positioned where we want them. Now we can take our 2 front connections and plug them in. There's one is bigger than the other, so you can't screw it up. You can't put them in the wrong spot. And once you have the connections made, these 2 little pieces that I showed you in the beginning, you can take your wiring and tuck it up in the channel, and then use this to secure the wiring. And then you might have to zip tie a little bit of it as well, but this will help secure some of the wiring up and out of the way. Sorry guys, I know we're getting low on light, and I know the GoPro is not good, but when you position your steps, you want to make sure the back end of the step is even with the back of the cab of the truck, so you can kind of see how it lines up right there. Okay, so just pay attention to that before you go tightening down any hardware. You want that back even with the back of the cab. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and close the door, and when we do it, I'm gonna assist the rear, because if you remember, nothing is tightened down yet. The brackets aren't tightened to the truck, and obviously the boards aren't tightened to the brackets yet. Okay, so I'm gonna close the door, and I'm gonna assist the rear up. Like that, okay? So now that we have the step in the up position, now we're gonna go ahead and tighten everything down. We're gonna wanna tighten the steps first, and then the brackets, okay? So go ahead and tighten the nuts that we just put on the steps, and then we'll go up and tighten the brackets to the truck, okay? The nuts on the steps, it's a 10 millimeter, so I'm just gonna go ahead and tighten those down real quick, and then I'll let you know the size on the truck end. I can't remember that off the top of my head, but I'm going to go ahead and tighten down the 10 millimeters on the step end. I realized we were getting extremely low on light, so I called it a night. Let me show you where we're at, and then I'm going to go over the rock light features, how to get that hooked up, and then we'll show you the lights and the functionality on these boards. So first thing you want to do before you tighten any hardware down is you're able to kind of wiggle these back or forward, and what you want to do is you want to get this rear edge of the board lined up with the rear edge of the cab, so you can kind of see right there, basically almost perfectly lined up. It's close enough, but you want to have the steps right around in that position. Once you have them in the right spot, these are the 10 millimeters that you're going to want to tighten down first, the ones that are underneath the board. So go ahead and tighten down the 2 here and the 2 on the front bracket. Once that's done, then you can go back up underneath and tighten down these that hold the brackets to the truck. They are a 13 millimeter head, so go ahead and tighten them down last after you do the 10s right here. Here's a little bit better of a look at the front of the steps, where you're going to have your 2 wire harnesses plugged in. Now that we have some daylight, I can give you a better look. And then there's that wire hider. What I did was I actually cut you get two longer pieces of this wire hider. I took one and cut it in half. It just seemed to fit a little bit better. Now you do have just a little bit of extra slack still once you tuck that in there. All I did was zip tie it. It's nice and secure, nice and up out of the way. You can see it's pretty solid right there. It doesn't hang down, doesn't sway when you're driving, nothing like that. And when you're standing back from the truck, you can't see it. It's tucked up in it underneath there pretty nice. So that's a better look at the layout. Let's go ahead and get the rock light feature wired up. In order to do the rock lights, it's honestly very simple. If you remember the white pigtails that I mentioned, you have two of them. If you opted for the rock light function, all I've done so far, they come with the butt connectors already on the ends. So you have two different, the white pigtails. All I've done so far is combine them into one. Okay, so I'm using 16 gauge wiring to do this. So I just used a little 16 gauge strip here and here, one coming off each white pigtail, and put them both into one end of a butt connector. Okay, so this is just gonna make it a little bit neater, a little bit easier to run the wiring. So now what we're gonna do is, out the other end of this butt connector, we're gonna run this to wherever you wanna put your switch. Now, I opted to just make my own wiring. If you guys have been around the channel, you know I can wire with my eyes closed. You can get a pre-made harness from them if you want. That's even easier if you're not really comfortable doing your own wiring. But in my application, since I'm doing my own wiring, all I'm going to do is take another positive wire out the other end of this butt connector and run it up to where I'm going to mount my switch, which is going to be up by the steering wheel. I'm not going to show that on camera. I'm going to take the same route that I did earlier in the video. I'm going to run it along this channel up into the front on the passenger side, under the console or under the dash over to the driver's side, just like I did earlier in the video. That's how I'm going to run this wiring over to that location. So I'm going to go ahead and get that done, and then we'll go from there. Now what I did with this is the switch I'm going to be using. It's just a simple 2-wire switch. There's no positive and negative. They're both positive. So all you got to do, that red wire that I just ran over the driver's side, I brought it up. There's a gap underneath your steering wheel that leads down. The wire's coming out up there, but then you can feed it up here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to mount my switch right there like that. So we just brought the red wire into one wire on the switch. The other side of the switch, we have to run another red wire from here to the positive post on our battery. Okay, so in order to do that, again, I'm just going to take a 16 gauge wire, and now I'm going to run it, instead of going, since our battery is on the driver's side, instead of going back the other way, now I'm just going to driver's side, follow that channel, pop it up underneath here, come up and connect to the positive post on the battery. Here's where we decided to mount the switch, just using heavy duty double-sided tape. I didn't want to have to drill any holes, so it's perfect. The wires run right into that hole, or that area, so you can't see them at all. Down behind, and then as I mentioned, same path coming into the back, up to the positive post of the battery, or actually it's this one, I'm sorry. Ring terminal, positive post. Wiring is done. These things are hooked up. Enough talking. Let me show you what these are all about. Let's start by showing you the startup sequence. As you can see on my truck, I went with the amber. I'm not sure if I mentioned that earlier in the video, but you can see that nice little startup sequence. It's an option. You don't have to get it. I personally think it looks awesome on the truck. So anytime you start the truck or turn your lights on, you're going to get that startup sequence. I actually think it looks really cool. So once you have the truck on and running, anytime you have your parking lights or your headlights on, you're going to have your running lights on. So again, you can see ours is amber. You can get it in white or amber. Totally your choice. So anytime, if you have your headlights off or your parking lights off, these lights will not be on at this point. So if the truck is running and you have your parking lights or your headlights on, you'll get this daytime running light, as they call it. Again, we opted for the amber option. Looks pretty sweet on the TRD Pro. Now, with the truck running, if you turn your parking lights or your headlights off, so let's just say you turn everything off, or you have your headlights on auto and it's broad daylight, so nothing is on, other than your headlight daytime running lights, the lights will turn off on the steps. Okay, so if you don't want the lights on during the day, just turn your headlights to auto or turn them off, and then the daytime running lights will turn off as well. Now let's show you one of my favorite options on these things. I love these sequential turn signals. So Again, we have the amber, so we went with sequential. You can also get them in sequential switchback, which means if you have your lights white, when you turn the turn signals on, they'll turn yellow as they flash, and then when the turn signal goes off, it'll go back to white. Again, we have all amber, but that's why we opted for the rock light feature. I'm going to show you that in a second. So, but you can see the sequential action on them. They're really cool. I think they look awesome. I absolutely love it. It's probably my favorite feature on these steps. All right, so now the rock lights. The rock lights will override every other feature on these steps. What I mean by that is, if you opt for the rock light feature, and this is why we did it, you turn that rock light switch on that I just showed you how to install, the lights just turn white. Okay, so the turn signals won't work. You won't see any amber. So the rock lights will actually work with your headlights off. They'll actually work even with the truck off. So that's why I opted for the rock lights. If I want them to be white, all I got to do is flip that switch. The lights turn white no matter what is happening. Again, you won't get the turn signal function or anything. So that's what I mean by the rock light function overrides everything. You hit that rock light switch, the step lights just turn white, and they stay that way until you turn that switch back off. So last thing I'll give you a look at from the outside when you open the door. As soon as you open your door, they pop right down, front or rear obviously. They pop right down. The motor is super smooth, very quiet, not not loud at all, and again, smooth as butter. When you close the door, there is a couple second delay, so I'll show you. So I don't know what, maybe 2 or 3 second delay until they pop back up, but again, very smooth, very quiet. Absolutely love these things. There you have it, guys, the Lumastep M2 automatic running boards by Boost Auto. Give these things a look. I'll put a link down below for you. You can build them out literally however you want them. There's so many options, and I think I mentioned earlier in the video, the website, the way it's laid out, you could actually see what every option will give you. They did a really good job at designing the website to give you a picture of what you're choosing when you're building the steps. So you can build them any way you want them. I can't say enough good things about them. I've actually had them on the truck for a few days now, and I'm absolutely loving them. So no issues whatsoever. The lights work perfectly. No malfunctions with the truck. You know, I know people are probably going to ask about when you're tapping into wiring. I've had no problems whatsoever, and I love them. They're super smooth, and I think they look really sharp. So any questions or comments on the install, put them down below. I'll help you out the best I can. Thanks for watching as always. We'll see you on the next one.